Hi everyone, this is Louise at the Ollie Foundation. We're going to be going live to have a chat with Joey inside A Depressed Mind. I'm going to give it a second and just wait until he's also online, and then we can get started with this conversation. Okay, cool. So I can see there, and I will be able to view requests. Gosh, everything's popping up so quickly, and go. Perfect. Hopefully. Oh no, you haven't joined. Oh goodness. Okay. Oh, there we go. Requests. Send request. Hopefully this will go through. Guys, there's always a few technical issues. This is just how it works. Okay, right. Usually this all goes very, very smoothly. I guess Instagram has also had a very hot day. Okay, cool. So I can see that. I'm going to try and send the request, and I shouldn't have ended that other chat so quickly. Okay, great. Goodness, I wonder why it's not letting me go live with Joey. Okay, so I can see the invite is there. Oh, you've been unable to join. Okay, perhaps it's an internet connection thing. We will just check about that. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Oh my gosh, I'm so pleased.
I was worried there.
Yes, I think it's good to start the live with a bit of adrenaline. So you have 2 minutes of feeling a little bit worried about it, and then it all goes totally fine. I'm
Do you know
really
what?
glad to.
When you public speak, I've got this thing of, you know, if you're going on stage, just do like a little trip on the way up, and then you get the
Yeah,
laughter out the way.
definitely.
So anyway.
You have to get that adrenaline rush to get started. Okay, great. So it's really great to see everybody coming on. It's really exciting. Please know, guys, that you can pop comments or questions in the little box at the bottom, and we can try and get to them. But I'm going to kick us off just initially by starting to say hi to everybody. And also introducing the Ollie Foundation, because I'm supposing that some of you actually have joined through Joey's Instagram. And so we are the Ollie Foundation. We're a suicide prevention charity. We're based in St Albans. Ollie actually stands for One Life Lost is Enough. And so we were set up by 3 parents who all met in bereavement counselling, and wanted to set up a charity that made sure that no other parent had to go through what they went through. And so we are really pleased to be able to host this conversation this evening. And I'm going to start off by asking Joey to just introduce himself and begin with a little bit about his journey.
Thank you very much, Louise. Firstly, thank you to Ollie Foundation for having me on here. My goal is literally to share some of my story, and hopefully that, you know, even if it helps one person, that makes me very happy. So just to introduce myself, my name's Joey.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you incredibly quickly. I've just remembered the thing that I was supposed to start with, which was a really quick content warning for everybody watching, just to say that we are going to be discussing things like depression, really dark times, and there will possibly be some mentions of suicide. So just if you're feeling in a dark place this evening and this isn't the right thing for you to listen to, whether you're listening live or listening later at another point, then please just look after yourself and know that your well-being is the most important thing, and know that there's always people you can reach out to if you find this talk difficult. For example, people like Shout or the Samaritans. So now we've just prepared you all with that. Please continue, Joe, with a bit about your journey.
Thank you so much, Louise. So I'm 36. I'm married. I've got 2 very lovely children, aged 2 and 4. And I spent most of my 20s in an extremely, extremely dark place. So depression, anxiety, but it was very severe. My depression, I was suicidal for a long time, and yeah, it really took its toll on me. And whilst I felt my friends and my network and other people were out sort of getting on with their lives and doing what people do, whatever that is, you know, whether it's career, relationships, improving their health, I felt like my life was spiraling out of control, through depression. And so, I had to do something about it, really. And yeah, well, I won't go into too much detail because you might have some questions, and obviously
Yeah.
there's limited time as well. But I spent a lot of time in hospital, which I generally concealed unless I knew you very well. So this is a big step for me as well. And even though I don't feel depressed today in any way, shape, or form, you know, it doesn't mean that it's completely gone away. But it's a big step for me. So yeah, for anyone listening, yeah, there is hope. I absolutely know if you're in a terrible dark place that it won't seem like it, because I was there. But honestly, there is hope, and never in a million years, and honestly, in a million years, did I think I'd be in the position I'm in. And I'm not anything special. I'm just a regular person, but I'm not depressed. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely hope, and that's all I wanted to share.
That's just, yeah, it's so brilliant to hear that, and you've kind of given me goosebumps already, just the journey of that, and realizing that it's always weird to, I think, like, look back on an experience, because when you're actually in there, you can't, I, we hear people say that you can't see the wood from the trees, you don't see how that can ever possibly be a way that you're going to not feel as terrible as you feel, like, right there in that moment.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way I used to describe it to my family and my loved ones was a bit like solitary confinement. I was in a padded room, there were no windows, and I was just stuck in there with my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people I found who weren't depressed or weren't struggling with it, focused on situations. So they'd say, you know, you're healthy, or you've got a job, or whatever the things that they thought were going for me. But the thing that I really couldn't get across enough was, but you don't understand. I'm doomed because I've got myself. You know,
Yeah.
I can't escape myself,
Yeah,
and
no,
that's
no job is going to take that away from you. No
correct.
relationship. You're going to have to spend time with yourself for the rest of your life, and that's the really hard bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was that, you know, I was sad, and there were, you know, things going on, but the main reason for feeling suicidal was I just didn't want to be with myself anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, so to describe depression for me, it's consistently feeling the same way. So hopeless, feeling a total loss of motivation. So
Yeah.
again, for people watching who are carers, or there'll be people watching who have no concept of depression, you know, and you might just think, well, pull yourself together, or whatever it is that you say. You know, the motivation and the loss of motivation, it can go so badly that even you know, nutrition or hygiene, you know,
Yeah.
can go out the window, because you know, you literally just don't have it in you
Yeah.
to do that. So yeah, I think the only other thing, again, I always sort of chuckle in my head, not that it's a laughing matter, but sometimes I speak
Sometimes
to people.
you have to find some things funny, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I see, being where I am now, and I said I'm not a finished product. You know, no one's ever 100%, despite how it may look. But I always giggle. You know, sometimes I speak to friends or people at work, or you know, anyone that say, "Oh, I'm just a bit depressed at the moment with the weather." I'm
Yeah.
thinking that, you know, that's not depression.
No,
Trust me.
not the same thing. It's
So,
Thank you so much for all of that. I think it's really interesting to pick up on stuff around people struggling with, like, keeping up with hygiene, keeping up with getting out of bed, keeping up with, like, all the things that, if you're not depressed, are like, yeah, of course, this is just a normal part of being a human. I eat my dinner, I make sure it's nutritious, I, you know, reply to my friends' texts, I live my life normally. But when you're depressed, those things can seem completely impossible and really, really, really difficult to get around. And I think there can also be, as a result of that, kind of like an element of shame or self-esteem. I don't know if you can relate to that, where I don't know if somebody's realizing, like, oh, I've struggled to complete this task so often, and then you feed back with, and now I feel really rubbish about that, sort of thing.
totally. I mean, as I said, the thing I wanted to escape was myself, and self-esteem didn't exist, and it's still something that's a daily sort of challenge. One thing that really helped me was, you know, when I went into hospital, there was a guy that pulled up, and he had a Ferrari, and he drove in really fast, and he got out, and he really looked the part. And I'd project and say,
He's
wow, look at this guy.
gorgeous.
Honestly, he had like really cool sunglasses. Everything was perception. I was like, this guy's just, what's he doing here? He's come to a hospital. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So on the surface of it, had wealth, he had the looks, he had the physique. He even had a smile on his face. Anyway, he sits down in the group therapy. First thing he says is, "I literally hate myself so much. I want to die." And I was like, "Wow!" And I'm saying to myself, "Well, you're sat. What else did I expect to hear that day? Because I'm sat
Yeah.
in a hospital." But it was the realization that even people that you think have self-esteem, and some people do, and
Yeah.
genuinely, I'm happy for them, because it's really important to love yourself. But even people that you think, even I don't know what people have benchmarks of what's success, whether that's financial, or whether that's looks, or family life, or love, or yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But even those people still might take a picture of themselves and in their head think, ugh, that's not great. So yeah,
It,
self-esteem is massive,
it doesn't
massive.
protect you. You can realize it doesn't protect you. I think realizing, and that can be a really, really therapeutic value of any sort of like group thing that people do, because you do get to realize, like, that person, I looked at them, I would have thought they were great, but they're also depressed, or they also think really rubbish things about themselves. And I think it can help. We hear from some people that it can help them sort of realize that those things aren't going to make you happy. It's going to have to come from yourself finding some sort of inner peace, um, and being able to work through it that way.
So that's true, but I did really struggle with that concept. And when I was in a very, very bad place, when I heard something like that, again, this is just for people listening, I was in despair, because I had, I hated myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't see any light. I said I was in this padded room with no windows, and then someone says it's in you to get better, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
oh God, I mean, that you may as well drive me to suicide. So look, I don't want to be controversial. I do think it's within us, but I'm on the other side of the coin. And
Mm.
one thing again, I just want to say for people who are either struggling themselves, or have, if you're a carer, and it's not always easy to see. So many people said to me, and even after this, I've had messages saying, but before this, sorry, saying, I never knew you suffered from that. You're always smiling, or whatever. Things aren't what they seem. People
Yeah.
show you what they want to show you. I don't know if anyone's seen the Roman Kemp documentary, about, the
Yeah.
producer Joe that he was working with. He said he was his best friend. And if he ever thought that someone would confide in him, he thought it would be producer Joe. And he went to work one day and found out that producer Joe wasn't here anymore. There's countless examples. Liam Payne puts in the
Yeah.
paper today he's worth 500 million. He's got, on the surface of it, got everything. And he says, he's not happy with himself. So for those suffering, I know it's really hard to accept this, because I thought, but you don't understand. You're not Joey. I know Liam
Yeah.
Payne, and I know producer Joe, but you don't get it. Joey's different.
Mm.
I'm sorry to say, but Joey's not different, and neither are you. And I just ask to not take that in a negative way. Although I appreciate that, when we're depressed, our minds aren't well. They're not healthy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, it's a massive, huge topic, and just your generosity in sharing your experience is really amazing. And I can see, like, the hearts popping up on the live stream, which is really, really, really lovely. And there's a comment that's come in from Hearts Chalkwalk saying, depression is the hardest thing to have and the easiest thing to hide. And I think that can definitely be said to be true. I think there can be, people can sometimes think that people are coming across as rude, or a bit like, then I'm like being a bit horrible. So say, for example, if somebody keeps cancelling on their friends, and they're like, oh, do you not care about me? But it's just that they can't get out of bed, and that's the key issue. A phrase that I always find really useful and helpful to think about is the hardest ones to love are the ones who need it most. And it just portrays to me that, you know, people in a really dark place can be really difficult to reach them and really difficult to express your love to them.
So, there's a message from my mum. That's very
Oh,
emotional.
yeah,
Thank you, mum. I Look, I think to have an understand, it's very, very difficult to empathize. And there's people I've seen who join this call, for example, and this is not bad, but they haven't been exposed to this side
yeah,
of things. So it can be very easy to say, you know, you might be in a good place or not, and you might have the best intentions in the world. But what I found was people said to me, you know, I don't know, think of people in Africa or pull yourself
yeah,
together. And what I would say to a caregiver or someone caring is have a look on Google. I typed in when I was in that way. I typed in things that you should be careful to say to a depressed person,
yeah,
and things not to say, you know, and to say because yes, without realizing people's intentions are only good generally. You know, no one wants you to do anything
yeah.
you know, drastic or bad,
Coming from
but
a place of care.
it totally comes from a place of care. But the method isn't always the right one, and just to understand that, you know, if you've got a broken leg, and I know this is super basic and super obvious as well, but you can't run a marathon. Sometimes you can't
Yeah,
even, you know, go out to walk. So if someone cancels on you, or if there's a behavior that in a social environment that you're thinking, what, why did that person do, you know, God, they're so rude. You know, I went to a party, they
yeah,
didn't say a word to me. Just stop to think for 1 second. Maybe they're going through something. Because I can tell you that many of my friends got married around the same time. And,
mhm,
you know, I'm talking my best friends. And again, they're on this call, they'll testify. I couldn't bring myself to turn up to their engagement parties or wedding or birthdays, you know, to even smile or send a text of happiness. And that's not because I don't love them dearly, but, you know, I had a broken leg in my mind. And if I'm finding it hard to shower or
yeah.
just to get out of bed, you know, going to a party or as crazy as it seems, sending someone a text message to say happy birthday, that was the equivalent of running a marathon for me.
Yeah. No, I hear you completely. That's, yeah, it's just taking a deep breath to take it all in. And I can see some more even lovely comments as well, and somebody asking a question. But yeah, I can completely see how it's trying to communicate that, because also when you're feeling really, when you're in that dark place, by the nature of it, it's hard to tell people, because if you had a broken leg, following from that analogy, you'd be able to say, hey guys, I've got a broken leg. There's no stigma around having a broken leg, so I can just tell you I've got a broken leg, and also I'm going to need crutches. And you're able to say that because it's your leg that's broken, not your voice. But when you're depressed, it's a lot harder to advocate for yourself.
Totally. And so the interesting thing is, I've had a lot of surgery on my shoulders, and
Mhm.
my shoulders have spent time in all sorts of funny looking slings. And when I went on the bus when I was in a sling, everyone's holding the door open and making sure I've got a seat. And all my friends, very, very over accommodating, you know, can I drive you places? But depression, you couldn't see it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, obviously I probably was a bit bitter just because I wasn't in a good place, but I'm thinking, do you know what? My shoulder's going to be okay. Like it's had surgery, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
But I am on my deathbed. You know, I'm really, really struggling. And even sometimes people who knew would ask about my shoulder, but not about anything else. The only thing
yeah,
I'd say is I appreciate now because I'm in a different place. It's not easy for them. You know, what do you do? It's very difficult to go up to someone and say, "Hi, how's the suicidal thoughts today?"
yeah,
You know, so
yeah.
I don't hold any negative feeling or any remorse for anyone whatsoever. Honestly, everyone tried their best, but just again, just be mindful that things aren't always what they seem.
I think what a phrase that we use quite a lot, Ollie, when people are looking back, maybe when they're feeling regretful about how they were around somebody who was in a bad place, or perhaps even if they've been bereaved by suicide, is we just find it helpful to remind people that, you know, you did what you could, what you had at the time. you know, you had the resources you had the understanding you had, and you can't go back in time and change that or say, you know, do anything differently. And people need to go easy on themselves as well, about how they've been around somebody that's not been feeling too great.
Totally. Look, I put my family through hell. There's no other way to put it. And if it weren't for them and my close friends, I wouldn't have the privilege of being on this call. I really mean that. But yeah, it's someone close to me had to take a step back from me at some point, and it was very painful at the time, because they were very close to me and absolutely instrumental to my recovery. But being again on the sort of other side of the coin, you know, or other side of the fence, whatever you want to call it, there's an analogy. I mean, you used that on the phone to me earlier, Louise, about you know, you can't pour your cup if pour and share some of your drink. Correct, pour from an empty cup. But what another phrase that or thing that I learned is, you know, if you walk past someone in the street and they're shouting at you from a ditch saying, Louise, please come and help me, get me out, you would put an arm in to help them, but you wouldn't jump in the ditch, because then you're both stuck in there. And I think it's really important for carers. I know it comes with so much guilt and so much pain and emotion, but you really need to take care of yourselves first and foremost. And I really mean that first. And it's not to put off people that might be watching this that are suicidal. But you know, if someone is broken or damaged themselves or jaded, that they're not going to be able to help you as well. So yeah,
that's really important. Point to raise. I think there was a question that's just that popped up a little while ago. Ben Green, I'm going to read your name as, says, what is the best thing that family and friends can do to support?
Okay, sorry, phone's can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Wait for just a second.
Okay, thank you. Well, Ben was a massive support and help to me. So yeah, thank you. I want to thank you publicly. But yeah, what I found is Googling the things, as I said, having a look at what not to say to people, because again, you might have great intentions, but just one of those comments can tick people over the edge. So to be careful, or very careful with that. The other thing, as I said, is as crazy as it seems, but look after yourself and make sure that you get some support as well. Yeah, because if people that help tend to help a lot of people. Yeah, so you tend to be a support network for, you know, commercially and friends, and I think that if you're not in a good place yourself, you know, that you're going to find it hard. I think, you know, maybe reading books is great as well, and yeah, I think trying to just spend time and be loving. Extremely difficult to disconnect yourself in terms of not getting too emotionally attached, because these are the people that you love. But try to understand that when I tell you one thing, and then I'll sorry, I tend to waffle on a bit, but
it's fine. So much here. It's really, really useful and interesting.
My family often said to me, you know, you do realise that suicide's very selfish, and what about us? And the thing that always I found so hard to communicate was, I actually found that comment was selfish, because I didn't want to be here. You know, I woke up every day and opened my eyes, and honestly, I was like, really? You know, again? This is not, you know, I'm making a joke of it now, but I was deadly serious. And so, you know, when I almost found it put pressure on me, and it made me worse sometimes. So again, of course, it comes from a place of care. You love your family, you want to help them, but in response to your question, Ben, you know, just try to, it's very hard to put yourself in their shoes, but try to read up about it, that, you know, even the self-esteem is so low and you feel so bad that you can even say to yourself, I can't even do depression right. You know, I'm depressed and I can't even do that right. So I'm out of here. So just, I suppose just having some understanding.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the things that I wanted to pick up on there was one of the phrases that I you really hope that people wouldn't use, but people often, and we have spoken to people that have, you know, had this phrase said to them, and it comes from a place of love and care, and they're wanting to check that somebody's okay. But the phrase, "You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?" is just, you know, really not very helpful, and can, yeah, I can see you like, oh gosh, yeah,
No, I mean,
not helpful. And it's, you know, that that person, if they if I feel like now is a good time to sort of mention our Ollie, one of our Ollie courses, which really helps people learn how to ask about suicide and have this conversation, and that's called Talk Safe, Plan Safe. And I can talk a bit more about that at the end. But if people knew how to ask that question, or how to safeguard the person that they were worried about without having to ask that question, "You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?" it would be just so helpful, I think.
I think what I found helpful as well, slightly deviating, but trying to go around other people that are in your position. So again, you know, in my 20s, I cannot tell you how many invites I had to go out, go on holiday with people, you know, do all inverted commas normal things that people do. And I was in, I mean, I must have spent, put it this way, my insurance company don't want to support me anymore because I cleared them out. You know, people were offering me, my family offered me a loan to continue to help me to pay for therapy. There are a lot of free resources out there. I went to a lot of free groups just in like a local church. But being around other people who felt the same as me, it started to give me some normality. Because, you know, one of the things that really pushed me was, I said it wasn't only the sadness, it wasn't only the lack of self-esteem, but I just felt like I wasn't right. I was like, you don't get it. You know, I'm Joey, and you know, you don't know. I'm just not right. Yeah, I just don't want to be here. And when I went to, you know, the guy that pulled up in the Ferrari and all these other places, you know, it's like suddenly I was like, wow, this person is, well, some of them are feeling worse than me. And some of them had attempted, you know, to do certain things, and they'd gone a step further than I had. And I could actually, you know, whilst it may be sad, but I could build rapport. But it was baby steps. So I started to surround myself with them, and again, lots of people, it's due to a lack of understanding. They try and take down what you're doing. There's a lack of understanding, not a lack of care.
So do you mean in terms of, I think something that we quite often hear is when somebody's saying, "I feel sad, I feel depressed, this is the circumstances," and then somebody that cares about them might go, but that's not a problem, or we can sort that out, or, you know, this is going to work out like that. And it's kind of the person that's supporting or trying to help has to be able to validate those feelings of, "I can see you feel rubbish about this right now," but because it's never been that somebody said, "Oh, at least you haven't got this problem," or at least something else, and that the person's gone, "Oh, thanks, I hadn't thought about the fact that it's still sunny. Luckily, I'm not sad anymore." Great. Like, it doesn't,
Exactly. And so two things. Firstly, there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning, for those that don't know it, and it's about someone that was in the Holocaust, which obviously from a circumstance perspective, you know, that's hell on earth, you know, the things that they experienced in there. But it's how they managed to find some peace and happiness within themselves. So I'm mindful with books, you know, anything I recommend to people who are suffering. I appreciate that at times I couldn't even shower, so I appreciate it might be a big ask. But the fact that if you just listen to this and know that someone has written that has been in the Holocaust, and for carers, that, you know, it isn't the circumstance, it's nothing to do with that. But the other thing I wanted to add, there's a friend of mine who I've got the utmost respect for, who I think might be on this call, but I'm not sure. They actually got in touch with me when they were in a very bad place, and we'd never spoken before, so beyond brave of them. And we actually started going hiking together. And the reason why it was so good, because we were both in such a bad place. And again, externally, some people might think, why would you just go and hang out with other depressed people and go for a hike?
Yeah.
But we had such a mutual understanding that, you know, I used to cancel 9 times out of 10
Yeah.
because I couldn't face going. I didn't have the energy, you know. But again, if you can find someone like that, I mean, this person's a, you know, a real blessing to the world. And another thing, last thing, then I'll stop talking. Sorry, is he he gave me a great idea, which was he created like a traffic light system,
Mm-hmm.
and the traffic lights were if I'm feeling okay, bad, or really bad, and it was things that you could do on those days. So if you're in a really bad way, like you know what that is, then your to-do list might be eat or have a shower. We're talking very basic things.
Yeah.
If you're on an okay day, it might be to go for a walk, but what it's designed to do, you can turn around at the end of the day and say, again, I appreciate other people might be making millions or falling in love or changing the world, but we're not interested in them. Yeah, we're interested in ourselves. And what you can do is say, do you know what? I had a shower today. You don't have to say it externally. You know, if you post on Instagram, I had a shower today, people be like, why is Joey posting that? Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. That's their journey. I totally get that. But that might be massive to me. So again, I'm thankful for that friend, but that was a great technique to do very basic things.
That's a really brilliant technique. I've got two things as well that I want to pick up on. Is firstly the connecting with people and being able to share the experience with somebody can be really great, because it can also mean that you're not scared of your dark thoughts to tell them about, because I think that sometimes when people are feeling really terrible, they don't want to shock or really upset the people that are close to them and maybe aren't getting it in the same way, and so it can be so great to have somebody that also gets it, that you can just say, yeah, I'm not going to freak you out by saying this thing. And then also about your friend's technique with the traffic lights, that's brilliant. I wonder where they found that, or maybe they made it up, but it's just so great. But something that we like to use at Ollie, which is kind of similar, which is a safe plan. And this is usually for people preparing, or not preparing, but like planning around if they know that they might be feeling suicidal. But people can also use it if they're just going through a period of depression, or they're just not feeling very well. And it's essentially doing the thinking of how to feel a bit better beforehand, so that when you're in that terrible, horrible afternoon, you don't have to think, what was it that like usually soothes me, or like you don't just get completely stuck in your horrible feelings. So for example, you might have, I mean, the phrase I like to use is, these things probably won't make it worse, and the things that probably won't make it worse are having a cup of tea, going for a walk, texting a friend, or having a shower. And even if you don't feel better after you've done that, you've got a cup of tea, like you've had a shower, you've gone for a walk, you've kind of moved yourself on from that initial experience.
Totally. Look, it's a bit like a diet. You know, if you're dieting and you know you've got a big birthday coming up, or an event or something, what I will do is I will eat dinner beforehand, so that I'm not in the perilous situation when someone says, go on, have one, because I'm already 90% full. So it is a bit like that. Yeah, it's a very good technique, you know, very good technique. But yeah, the traffic light thing worked great for me, and I think my friend was very proactive. Again, what they didn't necessarily realise was, for someone who's depressed to do that was unbelievable. You know, they really took some proactive steps. So you know who you are, and thank you and well done. But that was fantastic. So you know, lots of value there. But the other thing I wanted to say was, you know, back to the broken leg thing. When you're depressed, it doesn't have to be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be anything. You know, people getting into a lift. Some people are anxious, or of going outside. You know, it could be scared of a spider so badly you don't want to go to an event. But whatever that is, you have to remember that person is not there. It's not well, or that thought can disrupt their behaviours so much, right? So I used to want to avoid everything, and I thought people were the enemy. I was like, you know, remember my words. I know it's you're seeing the result now, and it's easy for me to talk now, but I really lived and walked through that experience, honestly. And because I thought I wasn't right for the world, I actually turned my back on the world rather than the other way around. And there are a lot of good people out there. You know, the amount of messages I've had today for something as small as this, you know, all I'm doing is I'm talking about myself, you know, and I've had people from, you know, that I wouldn't believe messaging me, good luck, you know, great thing to do. There are really, really lovely people out there. You know, the Ollie Foundation, like, you know, what you're doing, you are saving people's lives. I mean, this is not a job, a regular job. And again, this is for someone who's in a bad place. You might not think it. You might think no one's ever going to understand. You know, my friends, they just, you know, there's only one Joey and no one can see into my mind. So how is anyone supposed to understand? But that's what I was saying about man's search for meaning, and about, you know, some of these phrases that come out. I think if there's a phrase, like there's a phrase, this too shall pass, or,
Yeah.
you know, then it's been made a phrase because it's true, you know,
Yeah.
and
Cliches are cliches for a reason.
exactly. So I know it's cliche and it is annoying when you're feeling so bad, but yeah, it's just to say that people, you know, if you can take a blind leap of faith in someone, it could even be a stranger, yeah, then you never know that there are people like the Samaritans. I phoned them so much when I was in
Yeah.
despair, 24 hours a day. They're literally lifesavers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I got dejected when I went to a doctor because I'd say, listen, I'm suicidal, what could you do? And the doctor would say, here, take some pills, come back in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, I'm not, honestly, if I leave,
Yeah.
I'm not putting this on. I'm not here for attention. There might not be 2 weeks. And sometimes that would make me feel worse. I think,
Yeah.
what's the point, you know? But there are other resources and other people and billions of people all over the world suffering with it.
No, definitely. And just thank you so much again for sharing so much, because I just know that this conversation is going to be so valuable to so many people. And I'm just really pleased that we're able to share this with our Ollie community and with the people you know as well.
Thank you.
I think the one thing from there is that when you said the phrase like, oh, it can be a bit annoying, at Ollie, one of the things that we talk about is it's better to annoy somebody or for things to be a bit annoying than for you not to be there. And so, say for example, when I don't know, if you're flipping it around, he's speaking to somebody else and they're concerned about that person, and they think, oh, am I being really annoying? Am I like being really awkward asking them if they're okay or if they're depressed? It's better to irritate somebody than to have that experience that Ronan Kemp had and them not be there. Yeah.
Totally. And again, I had some people, my sister specifically, who is an absolute angel, but you know, she had young kids. I honestly put her through hell, honestly. But the fact she just always dropped everything just to make sure I was safe by being there with me. And I completely agree that the loneliness of depression, you know, but as a carer or as a sufferer, you might not feel this, but you have to just have a level of understanding or acceptance that the messages going on, the internal talk, is like poison. It's not reality. So you know what we might rationalize and say, why are they depressed, or why this, why that?
Yeah.
Just go and be there with them. I agree with you. One thing actually, a friend said to me on the weekend, we were talking about someone that wasn't in a good place, and they said, but I don't get it, you know, what's triggered them?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you know, I can't pass judgment because they haven't been exposed to it, but you don't need a trigger, you know.
Yeah.
It's an illness, it's creeping in your veins, it's inside you, you know. There's no
Yeah.
trigger. You could win £1 million or do all the other things
Yeah.
I said.
It can still happen, and obviously for some people there's going to be, it's also an important thing, I think, and this is, you can try and position this in this conversation, but the fact that being sad about, you know, circumstances, like hard stuff does happen in life, difficult circumstances do like happen to people, and it's about waiting, or you know, if you're going to count being depressed as a difficult circumstance, you know, the whole thing, you know, mental health difficulties, maybe you've lost your job or you've had a breakup or something, that stuff, life does hurt sometimes, and it's about being compassionate yourself and the people around you and waiting for it to pass, essentially, and staying here, staying alive while you wait for it to pass.
Totally. And I think, again, for carers, you know, life's full of ups and downs. You know, I can't promise I won't be depressed or you know, I've done a lot of work on myself, but I think the people who are close to me, like my family, you know, when I experience something that would bring regular sadness, as you said, because sadness is a part of human emotion, you know, and
Yeah,
part of life. You might watch a film that makes you sad, but that doesn't mean
yeah,
you're depressed. But they'd be so panicked. Oh, you know, has he gone back into it again? And you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've gone back into it, because being sad and crying is a normal emotion. You know, I'm very in touch with my emotions. I'm not afraid to cry. But again, I'm slightly contradicting myself, but there are signs that people give when they're
yeah,
depressed. You know, massive sign is behaviour. So isolating is a huge sign of depression. People's language is really important. So those that know me well, and there'll definitely be a couple of people sniggering at this, but not in a good way. You know, I'm a real stickler for language, so I like to pick up on certain things. And you know, there's a couple of phrases that honestly I simply don't say.
yeah,
One of them is not bad. So when you know someone asks me
yeah,
how I am, I don't say I'm not bad. But that's because I've put in a lot of work to learn that, you know, it's a very negative response. Again, the other thing I don't say is my other half, because you know, if something happens to my other half, then that implies, you know, if they're not there anymore,
yeah,
that you're half a person. But where I'm going with that is, if you can identify your own language, number one, and I literally, I'm such a stickler for language. Yeah,
mm,
so absolute words. There'll definitely be people laughing because I pull up on, you know, someone says, oh, you know, you never call me. That's not the case. You know, maybe I didn't call for a week, but if you can think of one time I phoned you, then I have phoned.
yeah,
But you know, they're known as thinking distortions. But where I'm going with this is, I have a tendency to be overindulgent and always think, oh, is that person depressed because I want to help? So,
mm,
you know, don't be like me. But you can listen out for people's language, and as I said, if they're isolating or using negative language without realizing,
yeah.
you know, you might just want to reach out and say, I hope you don't mind me asking, you know, and you know, you really don't have to tell me, but I'm here for you if you need me.
I think that's really important. I think one thing that I think I've noticed is if people say things like use like black and white language, like never, like things never go right for me, or I'm always going to feel like this, or things like that. We we have a useful on one of our trainings. We have, I think we've got a post on Instagram about it actually, about saying how to ask somebody how they're doing in a way that can work really well, and that's kind of saying, you know, hi, I've noticed this behavior. I've noticed you like haven't really turned up to anything with our friends recently, or I've noticed that you keep posting these like really deep quotes on Instagram. Sometimes when people are doing that, it means they're depressed or it means they're feeling suicidal. Is that the case for you? And that can just be a really easy way of sort of stating the observation and then saying, for some people this is the case. Obviously, for other people, they might just love posting really sad quotes, and that's okay. But you've made that contact with them.
Totally, and you would not believe, again, as a depressed person or a carer, the bond that you build with people by, you know, pardon my language, but getting past the bullshit. You know,
Yeah,
again, quite often at social events, I might not be the loudest, or I might not talk, you know, as such. But if you get me one on one, you know, I like to have deep, meaningful conversations, because look, my 20s are gone. There's nothing I can do, and funnily enough, I honestly wouldn't change them. Because it make, you know, when you're at rock bottom and you realize that, you know, the things that are happening in life, and we've only got one life and things like that, you want to get beneath the surface. And
yeah,
you know, I came off Facebook and Instagram for a number of years, because it was very damaging to me. You know, if I felt really bad, I had no self-esteem, you know, I didn't want to look into people being happy.
yeah,
That's not because I'm sadistic and I don't want, you know, I've got many love people, but it was too painful for me. So back to what you're saying, Louise, and for others, I think it's, you know, listen out to people's language, and like you said, what they're posting, because remember that you're just seeing one side of it. um,
yeah,
and the same with arrangements, the same with anything where you may pass judgment, you know, why on earth does such and such post whatever it is? Just think, what's that post designed to do? You know,
Yeah.
even if it's a complete, let's say someone's, you know, perceived to be showing off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, oh, I don't like show-offs. I would never do that. I'd never put my watch on Instagram.
Yeah.
Maybe actually they've got really low self-esteem and they're seeking external approval. You know, I know it sounds strange, but you might want to reach out to them and say, are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, but as I said, you know, don't be like me, because someone can put the most innocuous sort of, you know,
They
tiny
accidentally do an
negative.
upside down smiley face, and you're like,
I'm on
oh
it. Yeah,
no, what's
I'm on
happening
that.
to you?
But it's only because I want to help. So
No, definitely. And that's, you know, it's that's one of the, that can be one of the few silver linings to horrible experiences, is that you will be able to help other people with authenticity. And that's always something really important. So there's a quick question that popped up that you might be able to answer, which says, did you read a book about the language that you're referring to? And I wonder if they're picking up on, you used a really technical term, something like thinking distortions.
yeah.
Is that from a school of thought?
Yeah, so I did a lot of, when I was in hospital, I was in a lot of group therapy, and there's something called the 12 thinking distortions. Again, put it into Google, but you start to pick up on your own language, and it actually opens your world and opens your eyes to perception. So, as I said, I had a girlfriend when I was 18, and I used to, you know, I had no self-esteem, and I got, you know, I don't know how I had a relationship, but I had no self-esteem, and I always used to say, you know, you never tell me you love me, and you know, back, I said before, you never call me, and she actually picked me up on it, and at the time I thought, no, you know, I'll go with my gut feeling, I'm right. And you know, I still have those emotions. You know, don't get me wrong. I have people that tell me they love me, and I, you know, push them away. But the difference is, I can recognize that when that thought comes into my head, I can write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So CBT is brilliant, cognitive behavioral therapy, and you can do it yourself. It's like a triangle, and it's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Sorry, behaviors,
Yeah,
thoughts, and
thoughts.
emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where I'm going with that is, a behavior can be very different to how you're feeling. So, did I read a book? I learned about the thinking distortions, but sometimes going to a party, right, and I felt awful, you know, I really didn't want to be there. But honestly, as awful as this sounds, I'd walk around like this, smiling and saying, hi, 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 you know, with a smile on my face, because I know that thoughts, behaviors, and emotions are so connected. I appreciate we're getting a little bit deep now, so I'll
No,
step
it's
out
good.
of it.
It's
But if you change your behavior, then your emotion attached to that might change. So it's a little bit like, you know, if you're faced with life or death, so if you're feeling a certain way, you could feel on top of the world. Yeah, and someone comes and puts a shock to your system. So let's say you're in a bank, you're feeling brilliant, and it gets robbed at that very moment. Your focus at that moment changes into survival mode. You will not be thinking about your depression or your happiness. You'll be thinking, I need to get out of here alive.
It's irrelevant to you
Correct.
at that point.
Correct. So therefore, you know, logically, yeah, I appreciate you may not feel this, but logically, if you change a behavior or your physiology, yeah, if you're slumped on the couch and you're eating, smacking yourself with junk food, listening to bad music, and I've done and do all of this, yeah, sad music or watch a sad film, you may not be able to pull yourself together to go for a run, because that's a big ask when you're depressed.
Yeah.
But if you can have the logical thought that the language going on in your head, it's not right, your head is lying to you, then you can step away from suicide and say, do you know what, it's not that I'm wrong for the world, but my brain right now is a little bit unwell. I may need to take medication or get some therapy. So sorry for the long answer, but thinking distortions are big. And the other thing for me, I won't go into it, but NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is all about understanding. It's about perception and understanding how your language affects your outcome. So I'd look into NLP, and thinking distortions for me were, you know, the key really.
No, that's really, really helpful. I think another thing I think of when you're thinking of, you know, if you're thinking that somebody's like you said, like slumped on the sofa or eating stuff that maybe doesn't make you feel great, is the way you, I mean, I know we speak to people that say, you know, there's some days when everybody's been working from home, everybody's been wearing like jogging bottoms for a year, but actually sometimes, you know, having a shower, using the fancy shower gel, getting dressed up a little bit more, even if you don't feel like it, afterwards you can then feel like, okay, maybe I can feel a little bit differently about things. And making those little tweaks to your everyday life could be helpful. It's tiny bit there.
Totally, and it's back to, as I said, my dear friend that did the traffic light list. You know,
Yeah.
Going for a run when I was depressed I couldn't do it. You know, going to a party, I couldn't do it. It's again, people are only trying to help, but it's a mammoth task when you're feeling like that. Really, it's like climbing Mount Everest. But yeah, so you know, write a list of things, however basic they are, and get them done. And again, it's about conditioning yourself. So your language to yourself is very key. You know, if you're feeding yourself with, you know, I hate myself, I'm not right for the world, it will bring you down. But again, I'm not. There's no, you know, not to blame anyone, because when you're depressed, you're not choosing to do it as such. So,
Yeah.
but if you do something good, again, as cheesy as it sounds, pat yourself in the back. Honestly, look
Yeah.
into, you know, well done. You had a shower.
Gold star. It works for kids. It works. We're all basically little children inside these adult bodies, and yeah, we all need pats on the back as well.
It's so true. It honestly, but you condition it. You know, I think I don't think he's on the call, but there's a friend who we all sort of laugh at it, but it's actually a great technique. When he gets really, really angry, he looks at his thumb, and people think, what's that all about? But he's so conditioned that when that anger and whatever comes along, whatever he's you know, sort of conditioned on his thumb, he stops being angry. It's an anchor. You know, making those anchors are really important.
Definitely. Oh gosh, this has been an amazing conversation. There's been so much there. I really, really hope that this is going to work to be able to share this on Instagram later. If it gets lost, I'll be really annoyed. But that's up to the gods of technology.
Yeah.
I think I will really quickly run through a few of the Ollie things that we've got at the moment, and then possibly come back to you, Joey, for just, you know, your final thoughts, your final message that you'd give to people that possibly are struggling right now. So just to give a quick roundup for people watching about what we do at Ollie. So we provide suicide prevention training, we provide well-being workshops, and any sort of support that we can give, mostly over Zoom, for people who are supporting people, or also people that are finding things difficult themselves. So it spans from our main suicide prevention course is Talk Safe, Plan Safe. We're actually doing one tomorrow after 5 p.m. And it's 90 minutes. It really runs through, you know, the stuff we've been talking about today, like what not to say, what signs to look out for, how to approach that conversation, and also how to look after yourself if you're worried about somebody to do a suicide. Another thing that we do is goal setting, and this also comes into our conversation about setting those little things that you've got to do, having that traffic light system. And if your goal is to get out of bed, or your goal is to just brush your teeth more than once a day, then this goal setting workshop can help you work to that. It uses the concept of theory of constraints, and honestly, it's just so helpful. It can, you have a goal and you will be able to work backwards and see a plan. Another thing we do is something called Zentangle, and these are really adorable. Well, adorable sounds too cutesy. They're arty well-being sessions. They're also 90 minutes. It's, you know, it's like guided doodling, and anyone can do it as long as you can hold a pen. You can do it. You don't need any artistic ability. And we hear people say that these 90 minutes of Zentangle are the only 90 minutes a week that they're not troubled by their thoughts. So that's testament to it. And we do this on Wednesdays and Fridays. We're also setting up something at the moment, which is a men's walking group. So that's based in Hertfordshire. It's in Hartwood Forest. And that's a group of men going on a hike. I think it's on a Friday afternoon, but I can check those details. And it's the idea is you don't have to talk about your big feelings. You can just walk with other men that you know are like-minded, are going to understand. And the final thing that I'd like to that we're just setting up at the moment. All this, there's actually loads of things I want to mention. I'll quickly chuck in the fact that we have a parent support group on Facebook. That's for parents supporting their children, however old your children are. If you're a parent, it's a really hard thing to go through. That's a group on Facebook. You can send us a message about that if you're interested. We're also delivering a talk in July with a really eminent person in adolescent mental health who's just released a book, Dr. John Coleman, and he's talking about the teenage brain and how understanding neurology can help people support young people. And the final thing I'd like to mention is the fact that we're delivering a meditation course. It's 4 weeks starting next Friday, and it's going to be sort of mindfulness meditation on a Friday morning, and people are welcome to join. So all of that stuff you'll be able to find on our website, or you could send us a DM on Instagram if people are interested to find out more about things. And that's what Ollie does. So I'll hand back to Joe really quickly for your final thoughts. And yeah, thank you everybody.
Thank you so much. Genuinely, I'm really grateful for everyone that's helped me along the way. Sometimes you may have said something so what maybe to you minor, but it's been a massive help. My family, my loved ones, I literally wouldn't be here without you. And for those who are struggling at the moment, just one thought. I'm by no means the be all and end all. I'm no different to anyone else. I only reached out to Ollie Foundation because I had a journey, and it's a burning desire of mine to share it. And I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I can tell you that the happiness they've brought me is something I simply cannot explain. I'm in awe of them. I love them so much, and had I have done something, I never would have got to experience that. And just because you're seeing the results, yeah, a bit like a swan. Yeah, swans, they swim so nicely in the water, but what you don't see is their legs kicking underneath the water. And this stuff's taken its toll on me. I said 10 years of my life almost written off. I've had multiple operations and continue to have physical problems, which I believe actually comes from the same thing, because the mind and body are linked. So this journey isn't over, but there is inspiration, and it's so easy for me to say this now. So I really hope you can see this as just trying to help, but that happiness that I've got now from many things, but particularly my children, if I never would have experienced that, it would have been the world's biggest shame, honestly. And I cannot believe that I've even got kids, because I always said I'm the different one. Yeah, forget all the other 6 billion people. I'm different. It'll never work for me. I'll never experience happiness. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's
really
been
appreciate it.
So wonderful, and ending the evening on the the same goosebump feeling that I had at the beginning, that this has been a really great conversation. I'm so excited to share it with more people. It's been so lovely to have everyone here tonight, having your comments, seeing little heart things pop up. It's been absolutely wonderful. Just a final note before we go, if this has brought up really difficult things for you tonight, please do reach out to somebody. We know that Shout is a really good text line, and we also know that Samaritans can be really helpful, or reaching out to somebody that will be able to get back to you. So yeah, thank you very much everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your evening, and yeah, I hope to see some of you on our Ollie courses soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Live.
Thanks.
Good.